Hello and welcome to Aliens Revealed Live. I'm your host, Dean Caparella, here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. From alien abductions to monster-infested ranches to Men in Black, near-death experiences, close encounter experiences and more, we speak to some of the most amazing people on the planet, ready and willing to share their chilling stories with you. And they all come from the Aliens Revealed Live files here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, alien healing can conjure up images of a bright white light with affected or injured areas of the human body suddenly returning to normal. Or an ET hand touches the forehead of a human and whatever illness they are suffering from is cured. That's the way they occur on television or film, at least. Truth is, an alien healing is not a myth, and one man who has spent plenty of time researching ET healings over many years is UFO researcher and author Preston Dennett. Alien abductions are often portrayed as frightening and traumatic, and with good reason. Being abducted onto a craft from another world and then being experimented on is nobody's idea of a good time. And then there is CE5 contact, communication between ET and humans in a non-threatening environment and manner. But alien healing is a subject we probably don't hear a lot about. Immediately thoughts will turn to the Bible and the miraculous healing performed by Jesus during his time on earth. Are they one and the same? Are angels and ETs cut from the same cloth? Many people report being healed by aliens. In fact, there are now more than 300 documented cases of alien healings. The cases stretch back more than 100 years and come from all over the planet. Preston Dennett, author of the landmark book The Healing Power of UFOs, has been documented and researching healing cases for more than 25 years, and he's regarded as one of the world's leading experts on UFO healing accounts. The healings took place either on alien craft or people were visited in their own homes. Dennett also cited several examples of people healed while driving, with about 1 in 10 healed in hospitals. Dennett says he's surprised the topic of alien healing doesn't get more attention, and he's joining us now. Hi, Preston. It's a very interesting topic, alien healing. It's one that doesn't get talked about a lot in the ufology niche, but I thought we'd talk about it today because it really does happen.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising to me that it doesn't get more attention, because I have to tell you, I've gotten files or cases like this from a wide variety of researchers like Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, John Mack, certainly, cases all across the world. Most researchers have cases like these. Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith, I could go on. It's not uncommon.
Yeah. We hear of the miracles that are often reported in healing cases. I mean, is there a connection with those?
Perhaps. I mean, I think there's a tendency to sort of a little bit of a bleed through in some of these cases. Could these be angels we're dealing with? Because there's certainly a lot of literature on that. And when a glowing figure enters your bedroom and heals you, it can be difficult to interpret what exactly is happening here. So I imagine that some cases are interpreted both ways wrongly.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. You talk about glowing figures appearing in your bedroom. So can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd say that these healing cases sort of fall down into several major categories. About half, I found, actually take place when someone's pulled on board a craft and has a sort of an examination and operation or procedure. But a good portion of cases, about a quarter, involve this sort of experience, what we call bedroom visitation, which is not uncommon. A number of healings do take place while people are driving or outside and they're struck by a beam of light. What really surprised me is about 10% of the cases actually take place in hospital rooms, inside a hospital, which surprised me at first. But if you look into this phenomena, visitations do occur pretty much everywhere in very crowded locations.
Yeah, I just wanted to get, like you talk about hospital rooms, maybe some separation, because a lot of near-death experiences report when they come back, they've been healed of whatever illness they had. Again, is there some sort of a connection kind of happening there?
Yeah, I looked into that. You know, there was actually also a good 100 cases in the literature of people who've been cured as a result of a lightning strike. So there are parallels to that as well. I do know about cases where people have had a near-death experience and been cured as a result. I've got some first-time cases myself. So that's definitely what appears to be happening, is people are being exposed to some sort of very high-level energy. I'm not sure that near-death experiences can be closely related to the abduction experience. Mm-hmm. In a way that they're the same phenomena, wearing different masks even. I think we're dealing with completely different things. With near-death experiences, someone literally traveling to a higher dimension. And in some ways, that's exactly what's happening with an abduction experience, because these crafts do operate on that level and do, disappear. They can turn at right angles. They defy physics as we know them. I don't think they're actually defying physics. They just have an understanding of it and the ability to travel into these other dimensions.
So what sort of illnesses are we talking about? I mean, like things like cancer?
Yes, 40 cases of cancer. It's the most common specific illness that's cured, but really it's the entire, well, not the entire range, but very close. A wide variety of flesh wounds to, hands, arms, fingers, and so on, head wounds, but not just flesh wounds, and burns as well, but minor illnesses like colds, flu, stomach aches, back aches, like 15 cases of back aches, mm-hmm. bunch of cases of eye healings, some dental healings, and really a wide variety of serious illnesses, which is very surprising. Cases like arthritis, jaundice, diphtheria, tuberculosis, arthritis. I believe I mentioned really a surprising amount. Tuberculosis, muscular dystrophy, mm-hmm. Multiple sclerosis.
You've done a lot of research on this. How far back have you gone to confirm that healings were taking place?
There are some very early cases. They're hard to verify, of course, and tend to have less information. But they do seem to stretch back at least 100 years. There's a very early case of a gentleman who was cured of tuberculosis. And at the time, he kind of interpreted it as an angelic thing until, the later 70s, I believe it was, when images of gray aliens came out. And he's like, well, that's what I saw. It was very much the interior of a UFOs, as was described in the media. He's like, well, that's exactly what I saw back when this was like 1913, I believe, one of the earliest cases.
Wow.
But generally, it was the 1950s and 60s and 70s when a lot of these cases occurred, and since then.
Yeah. Does your research show that people just get chosen at random?
Sort of. Yeah, it's pretty evenly divided between men and women. There are cases involving very young children, elderly people. It's all over the world. Didn't find a whole lot of patterns. I found some. If you have a history of these encounters, certainly with yourself or in your family, that's about 50% of the cases involve that. So that's certainly a factor. Other than that, no real pattern. I did perhaps find that a lot of people who are having this experience, healing, are doing good work for humanity in some capacity. And by that, I would mean social workers or police officers or doctors, teachers, entertainers, police officers. I mean, this sort of thing. And it's kept turning up. I remember interviewing a lady from Norway who was describing how she had a back injury. And Greys came into her bedroom and quickly healed her back, very quickly.
Wow.
She had no prior UFO experience before or since. Scared her pretty bad, except immediately after it occurred, she was fine. And I'm like, well, what do you do for a living? She says, well, I'm very active with social activism and human rights and animal rights. I'm like, well, there's that pattern again.
Yeah. I can't quite get away from the fact, you talk about light coming into the room, people confusing ETs for angels. So there just seems to be some sort of a biblical connection there. I mean, like, for example, people praying. Have people reported praying before the healings take place?
Yeah, that does occur. It's not super common, and initially I thought it was very rare. I only had like 2 or 3 cases. Now that I've got a much bigger database, there's a good dozen cases that support that, or that go that way. One case that comes to mind involved a lady who was diagnosed with renal failure. She was having a lot of trouble going to the bathroom and went to her family doctor, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you need dialysis. Your kidneys have completely shut down." And she went home and prayed, and she called everyone she knew and asked them to pray, and just kind of praying to angels, really, and was instead visited by short humanoids who sort of rubbed her abdominal area. They weren't angels by any means, but instead appeared to be ETs, and healed her. She went to the doctor the next morning, who was very shocked. She says, "Well, you appear to be fine." And she told everyone she was healed by angels, though that's not what she believes, because about a month later, she was taken again, this time apparently on board a craft, where she saw the same humanoids who showed her kidneys and said, "Look, your kidneys look fine." This was with an instrument that they use, which kind of displays your organs in full color, in full living color. And then they showed her liver. They said, "Look, there was dark spots all over it. And these dark spots are bad. You need to stop drinking Diet Coke. It's damaging your liver."
Wow.
Is what they told her.
That's good advice.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like a classic case of remote viewing or the CE5 experience.
Remote viewing is sort of like an out-of-body experience, but a lesser version, I think. It's certainly very effective, and I believe it's a real phenomenon. I haven't done a whole lot of research into it, but it's definitely part of all of these phenomena are connected in a way.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, because what I'm driving at is it seems that there is a strong chance that you can actually make connection with these ETs. I guess maybe through meditation or praying, and they can appear.
There was another case from the Midwest of a lady who was diagnosed with breast cancer and was praying with her husband, crying, on her bed. And that night she was visited by Greys. So I think what we're seeing is a situation where ETs are very telepathic and do pick up on these sort of things. And honestly, I think these cases show that they have an agenda to heal people on a much wider basis than certainly the 300 cases I've collected. Most people don't report cases like this. It's much more common than I think we're seeing, or we believe, generally speaking.
Do you know what that agenda is?
There's multiple agendas that we can pretty much say confidently that they have just from their behavior alone. Like with genetics, they seem to be very interested in all things human and examining us and know likely more about the human body than we do. Certainly the hybrid baby phenomena, I believe is real. I got cases like that very early on in my research back in the 1980s and continue to. But yeah, there's multiple agendas. They have messages they give humanity. Whenever they talk to someone, it's usually into a number of different categories that are very positive. In a way, I mean, one is probably the most common message is warnings of some kind, which is very common. I hear it all the time about nuclear proliferation, perhaps, or pollution, our warlike ways, this sort of thing. So that's one of their agendas. We know that. Yeah. And another is like alternative energy. We're constantly showing people the engine room and saying, "Look, this is how we do it." And people come back from their experiences. I wrote about this, wanting to build a free energy motor. Not uncommon. As far as I know, no one's been successful or, certainly not commercially released. But that is definitely a theme that goes through these accounts. And as well as healing, spirituality of some form, whether it's, astral travel even, past lives, or usually some form of hands-on healing or Reiki or an interest in that, certainly.
Mm-hmm. We spoke
very positive. these are very positive agendas, is kind of the point I want to make.
Okay.
And,
we spoke with Melissa Kennedy during this series as well, and Melissa is an expert on the Rh negative blood theory, and I think she mentioned a figure of some 85% have an ET experience of Rh negatives. Have you gone that deep into the people that are being healed? Is there a common theme with their blood type?
Not that I've found. I haven't done a whole lot of research into that, but what I do see is that this is a universal phenomenon. It happens to all people on all continents, and has been for many years. I think what we're seeing with the abduction phenomenon is probably largely unprecedented, really, in human history. We haven't seen that. You can march out historical accounts of UFO sightings and even waves, but nothing at the levels of what we're seeing now, and certainly not the huge numbers of onboard experiences that are being reported. There's no historical evidence to show anything like what we're seeing since about the 1950s onward.
I wonder if that's because now more people are showing a bit more courage and coming forward with what's happened to them than before.
Yeah. Society has changed in also being much more educated, and because a couple hundred years ago, not a lot of people could read and write, or certainly not to the levels today. So there's that as well.
Yeah.
But still, I don't think, because we're seeing huge waves of activity over large population centers, and sort of a slow escalation of activity, and a grassroots campaign, I think, to convince people that UFOs are real.
You mentioned the Greys. Are they the actual ETs involved here, or are there other species being reported?
In my own personal research, not talking specifically about healings, I get mostly Greys, and that's true with healings as well. About 50% of the healing cases do involve Greys when there is a ET reported. But yeah, there's a wide variety. It's very hard to categorize. But mostly Greys, or some variation of them, or even hybrid-like Greys. Also mantids, praying mantis, human-looking, turns up quite a bit, and also what I would call strange humanoids. Almost universally, when ETs are described, they're of humanoid shape.
Right.
Even robotic humanoids, which it puzzles me. I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but we're sort of stuck with the evidence.
Yeah. Well, what do these cases say about the benevolence or malevolence of these ETs? Are they friendly or hostile?
I think it depends on the person you talk to, because there are people who have been healed who don't come away feeling like these ETs are their friends by any means. One lady had a gallstone removed, and she was not happy about it. Yes, they healed her, but she felt violated because she hadn't asked for it. She didn't know who it was. Someone had just came into her home in the middle of the night and did it. She has no memory of it, just waking up the next morning and she's healed.
Wow.
She's a nurse. And another lady healed of cancer kind of felt the same way. Some people feel like they're just being used like lab rats. But I'm going to say a good half are, come away from the experience feeling pretty good about it. And feeling like, there are some who are absolutely feel that their cases were truly benevolent.
Right.
I don't think it's an evil agenda by any means. I think there are many cases you can march out where ETs don't understand human pain, the pain and the trauma they're causing.
Yep.
But I don't think they're trying to cause pain. I don't think that's their agenda at all.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too. Yeah. I suppose, taking your car to your local mechanic to get a specific thing fixed or worked on, and then the car comes out and they've done something else to it and kind of given it an upgrade. Are these people reporting like a health upgrade? Is one thing being healed only, or they kind of come out completely healed of everything?
Yeah, there's a lot of cases where people are healed of a specific injury or disease that they're suffering from at that time, or multiple injuries. Or like one guy was struck by a beam of light, a Peruvian customs official, and was cured of nearsightedness and rheumatism just by this sort of beam of light. There's lights in a lot of these healings. But there are cases where people aren't sick and have an abduction experience and come away, physically upgraded. I don't know how else to put it. A lot of people, that I've talked to personally tell me they've gone to the doctor, and the doctors, even though they're elderly, are like, wow, you have the heart of a teenager. Very, very good health. There's one case from John Hunter Gray. He had an abduction experience, and following his experienced over 20 physiological improvements. He grew an inch, his feet grew in size, his wrinkles faded, his hair started growing faster, he stopped getting sick.
Wow.
It's amazing, yeah. I mean, there's also healings of psychological illnesses, by the way. One gentleman, there's about 3 or 4 cases of people cured of suicidal depression. One gentleman was ready to commit suicide, literally had driven out into the desert and had a gun held to his head when a gray appeared and kind of voided the suicide. He experienced missing time, but did not kill himself. Which, by the way, I looked up the top 10 ways people die in the United States and the world. In the United States, suicide is one of the top 10 killers. Mm-hmm. And ETs have actually, these cases show that the ETs have cured people with pretty much all the top 10 killers that we have.
Right.
So that speaks to their agenda, I think.
Yeah. It's remarkable. I mean, I remember watching one of the Star Trek movies, The Voyage Home, and Doc McCoy. They'd gone back to the 20th century, and Doc McCoy had gone into a operating room, and they were operating on this person, with physical instruments and cutting into him. And Doc McCoy was aghast. He said, what the hell are you doing? And of course he pulled out his little machine and went bang, bang, bang. The guy was fixed. So, what does that say about our technology compared to theirs, when they can just shine a beam of light at you and everything's gone? You're 100%.
Yeah, it shows that how primitive we truly are, and that we have a lot to learn from them. I think people are taken on board a UFO. There's a very strong medical theme that runs through onboard UFO accounts. People describe the ETs as doctors. There's lots of medical terminology used. It's usually in an exam room. They're very advanced in medicine. And I think we have a lot to learn from them. We call, diseases chronic, which aren't really chronic at all because they are being cured. There's, some very well verified cases. Jim Schaefer up in Winnipeg, Canada, was cured of cancer. Got before and after x-rays, doctor statements. It's an incredible case.
Yeah.
So this is great medical evidence. Medical evidence has always been something that could make or break a case. But cases like these, where we have before and after x-rays of tumors disappearing, there's another case here in Southern California, same thing, shows that we have quite a bit to learn about medicine, and this, these ETs certainly have a lot to teach us about it.
Mm-hmm. Some people watching may think, well, if ET has the power to cure us, why do millions still die each year?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's sort of an enigma about this. Bud Hopkins, when I cornered him once at a convention, I asked him about healings, and he's like, yeah, we do get these cases, but there are still lots of people dying of heart disease and cancer and so on. I think to a certain extent, they're stepping back with sort of a laissez-faire attitude. They can't just hand over the healing technology because we would abuse it. I believe is part of the problem here. Certainly that's the pattern we've seen with other technology, and given to like a military force who appear to be using it or already have this technology. It could cause bigger problems of overpopulation and abuse of wealth and privilege, and sending injured soldiers back out into the field just after zipping them back up again. This could be a huge problem. But on the same vein, there are now whistleblower accounts coming out of crashed UFOs, and they're pulling out all kinds of healing technology. These objects that can open a person's body or heal a cut instantly, very much like Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Another like jewel-like object which slides over a person's body and locates the tumor, and various ways of healing people with this ET technology, which apparently is being used on Earth by humans on a limited basis, but it's not being released; it's being suppressed.
Wow. How do ET healings compare with other miraculous healings? Are they connected or completely different?
I think they're probably using what we're seeing definitely is very strong patterns between certainly angelic healings, which I looked into. I read all the literature, well, not all of it because it's vast, but there's a vast literature on angels and angelic healing, and a number of cases which I'm like, this is very close to what I would call a UFO healing. Looked into healings at Lourdes and other sacred springs and historical miracles like that. And there are parallels there as well, which certainly make you wonder if these are being misinterpreted or is it a separate phenomenon? I think certainly in some of these cases it's a separate phenomenon. I really do. And the angelic literature is just, there's a lot of it.
Yeah. Preston, what kind of pushback is there, say, from skeptics? Not the usual skeptics, I guess people under the religious banner who want us to believe in a higher power, but not ET actually performing the healings. Is there any pushback on that?
There has been some. There is a segment of the population, certainly, and a few well-known researchers who say that the UFO phenomenon is demonic. And I've, sparred with a couple of these guys every now and then, which is difficult because they're pretty, I don't want to, they're set in on their theory here and don't want to deviate from it despite there's evidence showing the contrary, which I can march out because I studied demonology. I've got books on it. And I've talked to people who've gone through it and experienced pretty much what you would determine as possession. And it's difficult. It's a horrendous true phenomena, but it's not the same. It's got a completely different pattern, a completely different manifestation. We're not dealing with poltergeists here. I'm someone who, after examining the evidence, having studied for many years, still am attracted, and it's my assessment that we're dealing with extraterrestrials in the classic sense, for the most part. There are people like us. Their behavior falls under the same umbrella as human behavior. And honestly, it's skewed a little bit more towards the positive. And what we don't see are accounts of like just outright sadism aboard UFOs, or just torturing for fun of it, or mass murderers, or war, this sort of thing. So yeah, I'm overall pretty hopeful about it. I don't think this is an evil takeover phenomena.
Yep.
And I understand that some people feel like, this is demonic, but I don't see a whole lot of evidence of that. I really don't.
Right. Fascinating discussion. We could talk about this all day. Your book, The Healing Power of UFOs, people can get it from Amazon, all good bookstores, your website.
That's right. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show. If you just Google my name, it should take you to my website. I've got excerpts there of all my books, and you can contact me through the website. And I love talking about the subject. I think it's really important and has a potential to change the world, really.
Before you go, Preston, I've been asking all our speakers about their thoughts on disclosure. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on it, but can you tell us a little bit about what you think disclosure? Is it happening? Is it going to happen?
Well, it's certainly been talked about since the day I got involved in it, when it was always sort of like on the horizon tomorrow, and it's never happened. But what we do see is a continuous sort of process. I do think it will happen. I think it's inevitable. I don't think UFOs are going to go away. It seems to me the UFOs have a sort of an agenda of disclosure as well, though they too, could do it in a day and aren't. So it seems to me it's very tightly controlled. and that it will come forth. But I'm not sure it's going to be tomorrow or even the next day, but hopefully within our lifetimes, we're going to see some very major differences in how this subject is treated from today.
Mm-hmm. Say it does happen. What do you think the world would look like, post-disclosure?
Has the potential, I think, to look very different. I mean, we could have a complete end of wars and a completely new age, because we're looking at some very bad times right now. If we don't take care of ourselves and our warlike ways and our tendency to pollute our planet and the greed that's choking our planet and so on, the divisiveness is a real problem. And I think if we don't solve that, we're going to suffer from it, and that's when we might see, some real changes in how this subject is healed, because it has the capacity to solve the energy crisis, the economic crisis, the environmental crisis all at once by just releasing these ET technology. I think that's going to happen at some point, and it might be a crisis that precipitates it.
Okay, Preston, thank you very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And as I said, a fascinating discussion. And your book is The Healing Power of UFOs. And people can just Google you, Preston Dennett, and it'll take you to your website.
That's right. Yeah, thanks very much.
That's leading researcher and author Preston Dennett. Legendary researcher Stanton Friedman had a long-running battle with the skeptics, but according to world-renowned researcher Grant Cameron, he loved the fight. Friedman's ongoing battles with master UFO debunker Philip Klass are now part of ufology folklore. Friedman never backed away from a fight, or more to the point, baseless skepticism which he knew he could defeat. In fact, during Aliens Revealed Live, Cameron said Friedman had two favourite projects, the MJ-12 document and debunking skeptics.
Well, I guess the favorite was the MJ-12. That was the concept where the idea is there's a group of guys that are in control of the whole thing, sort of like this, the cabal that's running the whole show. And Stan got involved. It was actually kind of weird, because this is the background stuff I was looking for, is this document was leaked in 1984. It was first, the MJ-12 word was starting to be leaked out in about 1980. And I've always said it's a slow drip disclosure, that they're putting out material and using plausible deniability. So they alter documents, they put it out where they can say these documents are phony, and they're putting it out. Now, the big MJ-12 document, which I guess Stan probably spent his whole career trying to defend himself, because people figured he had been taken, and he was defending this document as being real, came out in December of 1984. But Stan actually did not see the document until it was actually made public in about May of 1987. So there was 3 years where he didn't see that document. And the thing was, he was asking for this document, but Bill Moore was saying to him, well, it's too unsafe to send you the document. You got to remember, this is before email. This is snail mail stuff, and he didn't want to send Stan this document. So the weird thing was, this document that Stan basically, I think, spent the vast majority of his time defending, that he was right about the MJ-12 and the document was real. He didn't really see the document until it was too late, where he got stuck in it and he was defending it. I would say that was what he spent most of his time on. And the other thing was basically fighting with skeptics. So the famous Phil Klass from the Aviation Week in Space Technology, there is literally hundreds of pages of correspondence, snail mail correspondence going back and forth, where these guys are arguing about various subjects and like that. So those were the two main things that I think Stan was basically working on, was the skeptic thing of trying to hammer on people who really didn't know what they were talking about, and that the flying saucers did exist. If you actually looked at the evidence and didn't ignore it, it was for real. And the fact that there was a control group that was running the whole show. But there, I think he sort of got backed into that corner where he had to defend the document and protect his reputation, whereas the vast majority of people believe the document was not real.
That's ace researcher Grant Cameron. Stanton T. Friedman passed away on May 13th, 2019, but has left a huge legacy and paved the way for other ufologists to follow. Do UFO debunkers miss him? That's coming up next on the Alien Revealed Live Files. Thanks for being with us. Don't forget to check out our site at arlhub.com. That's arlhub.com. And always keep looking upwards.